بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تعالى وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. فقد نوينا التعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة نبيه والدعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على خير وكل ما نواه مشايخنا ابتغاء وجه الله وثوابه وقربه. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما نافعا يا كريم. Alhamdulillah, in our morphology class, the introduction to morphology, we've been talking about a few different peripheral discussions relating to building types of words. So last week we discussed building, how to make and how to form the command verb and how to form the prohibitive verb, the nahi, right? And how each one is made and whether they're made from the past tense or they're made from the present tense. Now this goes back to an original concept that we mentioned before, that verbs, right, there's a slight difference of opinion if you get into the really deep level as scholarly works, that verbs are the root, that verbs are the base from which other words are made from. And if you note that, for those of you who have taken the previous grammar class, that we mentioned that nouns are of three types. There are nouns which are not derived from anything else, nor any words are derived from them. Right? And there are only a few. There's not many that are like that. Then there are others that are mastar, they're root nouns, which are derived from verbs. And from which other nouns are derived. And those other nouns are called the mushtaqat. I'll write it down. Right? It's called mushtaqat. Now, for those watching, who can tell me what the root words are of mushtaqat? Mushtaqatun. You can unmute yourself. Sheen.
Ta and qaf.
What is the ta a root letter, or is it an extra letter? Is it an additional letter? Which out of the 10 forms, which form has a ta as an extra letter?
I think is it form 8?
Form 8, yes. So if ta'ala. Right, and obviously, if you see the meme with a dhamma on the beginning, you can tell that it's one of these types of derivative nouns that we talked about already, either the active or the passive participle. Right, so like we talked about ism fa'il, right, that's form 1. We'll be talking about this today, so we won't get ahead of ourselves. Right, so the ism maf'ul of form 8 would be mufta'alun. Right, but this word is made out of sheen, qaf, qaf. So you can see the qaf has a tashdeed on it. So there's 2. So it was actually mushtaqaqun, or mushtaqaqatun if you make it feminine. And then the 2 qafs were brought together. Right, so I say that to say that the word shaqqa, right, means to break something off of something else, right, or break something apart. Right, so the mushtaqat are nouns that were broken off of the original word. Right, so if we take, for instance, the word yu'allimu, what does yu'allimu mean? Anyone? What does yu'allimu mean? Ar-Rahman allama al-Qur'an. Right, so allama, form 2, means to teach. Allama, form 2, means to teach. So yu'allimu means he is teaching. Okay. Now from there you have the word mu'allim, right, which is a teacher. Right, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So this word, right, mu'allim, is derived from this word. And this is why they're called derivative nouns. So now this is where grammar and morphology interlink, right, when it comes to nouns, right? But not all nouns that were derived from verbs. Nouns that were derived from verbs, they have to do with sarf as well as nahu. So we'll be talking about that today. In essence, there are 6 or 7, 7 is a better number. There are 7 mushtaqats. And if you want the full name, it's al-asma, the nouns that are al-mushtaqqa, derivative nouns. Right. Asma is the plural of ism. Al-asma al-mushtaqqa. Right, so there are 7. So we're going to be talking today about each one of them, inshallah ta'ala. So the first of them is that we talked about, so we won't spend too much time on it, which is ismul fa'il. Who can tell me what the ism fa'il is? Ismul fa'il? Can anyone?
So it's a noun. Is it the doer?
Yes, it's the doer, exactly. Right, so it's a noun that denotes the active participle in the equation. Right, so when we're talking about like a verbal sentence, so if I said daraba zaydun, right, in this sentence, daraba is a verb, right, and zayd is the fa'il, is the doer, right? But there is a difference between fa'il, right, and ismul fa'il, right? So here zayd is the doer, right? But ismul fa'il is a type of noun that denotes a doer, right, of the action. So zayd is only a doer if it's in this sentence like this. In this place, it's a doer, right, of daraba. But if I said, right, sami'un, right, sami'un is ismul fa'il. It means a hearer, a person who hears, right? Or alimun is a person who has knowledge, right? So it's a type of word regardless of where you put it at in any sentence, right? So if I said daraba zaydun, zayd is the fa'il of the sentence, right? It's not an ism fa'il. Zayd is just a regular name, right? But if I said zaydun, if I change the sentence, daribun, how would you translate that? Zaydun daribun.
Zaid is a hitter.
Zayd is a hitter. Good. Zayd is a hitter. So the word hitter, right, but in and of itself, regardless of it being in this sentence or in any other sentence, is a type of word called ismul fa'il. Right? It's a word that was derived from daraba, but it has within it a few meanings. All right, so inside the ism fa'il, you have a doer, a person, right? So right, there's a hidden pronoun in it, and we'll tell you about that in a moment. And there's an action. So what's the action here in the word daribun?
Eating.
Hitting, exactly. All right, so daraba is within the meaning because the root letters are made out of daraba. So the reason why we said that there's a doer implied is because depending on who you're describing, you would change daribun. Right, so I'll write out the scale for you. And this is a really good scale to memorize. Right, so it starts with right? The singular is daraba, daribun, right? And that's made out of the pattern fa'ilun. That's the pattern. That's why it's called ismul fa'il. It's made out of the pattern fa'ilun if it's from form 1. Right? So daraba is form 1. How do you make it into the active participle? Ismul fa'il. You change it to daribun, like fa'ilun. So daribun, if it's dual, daribani. Right? And if it's plural, right, daribuna. Right? So you have, for instance, what does the word kafir mean? Kafir.
Disbeliever?
Disbeliever. Good. Right? So you have, right, it's the same thing as like daribun, kafirun. Right? How do you say disbelievers, plural?
Kafirun or kafirin.
Yes, kafirun or kafirin. So that's how it breaks down. Right? But you can also make it feminine. Right? So if I said, for instance, Aisha daribatun, right? I'd have to match it. Right? Aisha daribatun. I wouldn't say Aisha daribun because that's masculine. Right? So daribatun, and then dual again would be just adding the alif noon at the end. Daribatani. And then the plural would be daribat. Daribatun. Right, so this is the scale for the ism fa'il. Okay, so now with this scale implied, we can see two things here. That there's a section of it that's masculine. There's a section that's feminine. There are singulars, duals, and plurals. Right, so that's why when you say daribun, it's automatically implied that you're talking about a singular male. Right, so you would say Zaydun daribun, but you wouldn't say al-muslimuna daribun, right? Because it has to match. All right, so if you want to join that with the corresponding pronouns, it would be huwa, huma, and hum, hiya, huma, hunna. All right, so when you're saying daribun, you're essentially saying two things. There is a doer, which is the implied pronoun, and then there is the action itself, which is made up of what root letters is your ism fa'il made up of. If it's kafirun, the action is kufr. If it's daribun, the action is darab. But what does this not have as opposed to the actual verb daraba? What's missing in daribun that daraba has?
A tense.
A tense, right? So daribun is a noun. Daraba is a verb, right? So automatically, nouns do not have a tense. Right? Nouns only have a meaning, right? They may have even a pronoun, but they don't have a tense. Whereas verbs have three. They have a doer, they have a pronoun. So they have the pronoun, the action, and the tense it happened in. So daraba Zaydun, Zayd hit, past tense. Zaydun daribun, Zayd is a hitter. And the only reason we say is because there's no way to say a sentence in English without using a verb, right? But there is no tense implied in daribun. So, any questions on this before we can show how to make the ism fa'il? Right, so there's a lot of examples of ism fa'il in the Qur'an, right? Like Allah talks about, right? Al-muslimatun, qanitatun, salihat. Right, so if you say that those men are salihun or salihin, they are righteous, but you would say that those women are salihat, right? Just like the difference between daribuna and daribat, right? This one is plural masculine, one is plural feminine. So, right, and then when you say like kafirina, that's only because it's in a different state. Right? It's the same thing as daribuna, except that it's ya noon, and that's when it's mansub. We talked about the words that are mansub, right? if any one of these words becomes mansub, right, it changes slightly. So body ben, body baini, and body bina, body batan, body batini, and body batin. So, okay, so that's the first one. This is called the active participle. Okay, how do we make it? Right, let's just give ourselves some space. Right. How do we form اسم الفاعل? تمام. So how do we form the ism fa'il? Okay, if it's form 1, then it's very easy. You take your verb or whatever root letters you want to use. Oops. Okay, we have three verbs here. They're all form 1. Let's do one more. Nasara. Okay, we want to change this to ism fa'il. Right, so we're going to use the pattern of fa'il. Fa'il. Fa'ilun. Right, so the first letter, right, you add an alif after it. So ba, ribun, and everything stays the same. The second to last letter gets a kasra, and it ends in a tanween. Right, if after that you want to make it feminine, then you add the body batun, right? Right, but the basic is this, right? So kafirun, fa'ilun, shakirun. What does shakirun mean?
Grateful.
One who's grateful.
Good, a grateful person, right? A grateful, right? The grateful one. Tamam. What does nasirun mean?
The one who helps.
Good. Right. Is that past or present tense?
Past. The one who helps.
The one who helps, is that past or present?
Does
Is it a verb?
it's an ism, so it shouldn't matter. It should be the same.
Yes, right. So nasara is past tense, right? But nasirun is without tense. It's a noun. Good. Okay. So that's form 1. So form 1 is pretty straightforward. Right? You just take your 3 letters, right? You add an alif after the second letter, and the second to last letter, which is the ayn letter, the one that matches with the ayn in fa'ilun, that gets a kasra, and then you end it accordingly. However, form 2 to 10 are a bit different. So form 2 to 10, let's just use a few examples. Right? The ismul fa'il is made from the mudari'. It's made from the present tense. So let's give a few examples here. Let's hear from you guys. Which forms are these that I'm writing here? And feel free to look at the chart that you guys have, that you all have. Right, so what form is yu'allimu?
Form 2.
Form 2. Okay, what form is yujahidu?
3.
Form 3, good. And what form is yastaghfiru?
Form 10.
Form 10. Okay. Right, and then you can, all the other forms will follow the same exact pattern. So these are just 3 examples. Okay, so first step, you have your mudari'. Right, second step, you change the first letter, which is in this case, the ya. Right, of all of them, you change it to a meme with a dhamma. So meme with a dhamma, meme with a dhamma. And how does that look? So yu'allimu changed to, I changed the ya to a meme. Mu'allimu.
Alimu.
Right, what does yujahidu change to?
Mujahidu.
Mujahidu, good. Mujahidu. And then yastaghfiru, it's a bit tougher. It's a long one. What does that change for? Change to?
Mustaghfiru.
Mustaghfiru, correct. Okay. And then the last thing you do is just change the final word to a tanween. Right? Because nouns, they have to either have an alif lam or a tanween. Right? In most cases, there are some small exceptions. Right? So either you can say al-muallimu, the teacher, right? Or you say muallimun, right? A teacher. And both of those are correct. Right, so yu'allimu means he is teaching. So there's a tense and there's a doer and an action. Right? Whereas mu'allimun is right, a teacher, but the context is what gender? What gender is mu'allimun?
Masculine.
Masculine, right? So it's masculine and singular. So what pronoun does that match with?
Huwa.
Huwa, good. So if I wanted to say a teacher, but I wanted the meaning to include it being a woman, how do I change it? How do I say the word?
Muallimatun.
Muallimatun, good, exactly. So you change it, right, by adding the feminine ta at the end. Muallimatun, right? Same thing with mujahid. What does mujahid mean?
The one who does jihad.
Yeah, the one who struggles, right? The one who does jihad, right? So mujahidun, right, is male. So how do I make it plural? For instance, masculine plural.
Jahidun.
Mujahidun, right? Mujahidun is marfu' and mujahideen is mansub or majrur. Okay, let's try mustaghfirun. I want to make it feminine but dual. How do I do that?
مستغفرتان.
Mustaghfiratani. Good. Right, or tani. So, right, so form 2 to 10, right, they're all the same. They are made out of the mudari' ma'ruf. Right, the mudari' ma'ruf. Who can recall what ma'ruf is? Ma'ruf means?
Known.
What you're right, it's known, but what is known?
The doer.
The doer is known, right? So we're saying he is teaching, right? So there's no ambiguity with regards to who's the doer involved, right? The doer is mentioned, right? What is the opposite of ma'ruf?
Majhul.
Majhul, good. Right, so with that in mind, right, the next topic, right, this is ismul fa'il. It's the active participle, right? It's a noun that denotes some person doing some action, right? Right, so the person is there, right? Muallimatun hiya is the person. So you would say Aisha tu muallimatun. Aisha is a teacher, right? But the next one, which is the second out of our 7, is the ismul maf'ul. We talked about this slightly, right? Right? And this is the passive participle. Okay. Now, bringing back into context what we said before. So, daraba Zaydun, let's say, Amran. And that's how, right, just for those who are wondering why that wow is there. In order to distinguish between the word Umar and Amr in Arabic, the Arabs added a wow after the ra of Amr. Right, so the wow, it means nothing. You're not going to pronounce it at all. It's just to distinguish between Umar and Amr. Right, right. So daraba Zaydun Amran. So what kind of word is daraba?
Then
Fi'l, it's a verb. What kind of word is Zayd?
Or
Sorry.
فاعل.
Fa'il, right? It's the doer of the sentence, right? So with regards to the sentence, Zayd is the fa'il. If we just eliminate the sentence, Zayd is a name, right? So we're talking contextually in this sentence. Zayd plays the role of the doer of the previous verb, right? And Amr is what?
مفعول.
مفعول.
Maf'ul. It's the object. Right? So Amr, in context of the sentence, plays the role of the object. Now, right, similar to the object, the ismul maf'ul, right, it's a noun that entails a doer and an action with no tense, but the meaning implied is a passive meaning. Right? So if I said Amrun madrubun, how would you translate that? How would you translate Amrun madrubun?
Amr was hit.
Amr is, it's
Amr.
hard
Or
to say it
being
in
hit.
English without
Amrun is
giving it a
one
tense.
who received the hit.
Okay, yeah. So in order to really give it its right, you have to elaborate like that. You have to say, Amr is the one who got hit, essentially. Right. So, right, but madrub doesn't have any tense. Right. So it's in English you have to put an is, right, or something in between the subject and the predicate. So here we have daraba is a verb. Right. He hit. Daribun means what is daribun?
Hitter. Person
Hitter.
who hit.
Good. Now, if we changed daraba to the passive, right, the majhul version of it, how would you say daraba? How do you say he got hit in one verb?
Duriba.
Durib.
Duriba, exactly. Right. Right. So you can see madrubun. So here the ismun fa'il. Right, sorry. The ism fa'il here is a direct representation of the regular verb, the ma'ruf verb, except that we stripped it of its tense. Okay? Whereas the ism al-maf'ul is a direct representative of the passive, the majhul verb, right? Except that we stripped it of its tense. All right, so you could say Zaydun duriba, or you can say Zaydun madrubun, same thing. Zaydun daraba or Zaydun daribun. They both mean the same thing, but contextually, there's a slight difference between a verbal sentence and a nominal sentence. So, does that make sense so far? Don't be shy if there's any questions. I had plenty of questions when I first learned this. So, okay, so similar to the ism fa'il, try to keep that up. Form 1, right, is built off of the name of the thing, right? It follows the pattern of maf'ulun, right? So whatever your 3 root letters that you want to put onto this form are, you would plug them into the fa, the ayn, and the lam. Right, so I'm going to give a few words. I want you guys to tell me how to make it. Okay. Who wants to go first? Let's just go in order. Sister Adia. Shakara. How do I say the passive participle?
Mashkurun.
Mashkur. Good. All right. So how would you translate it? If shakara means he is grateful, right, how would you translate mashkur?
He was grateful.
Mm,
No, sorry.
you kind of have to make it wordy in English to
Yeah.
kind of give its meaning.
it wouldn't be he.
You can say he if it's masculine. So mashkur, mashkur.
He was grateful. No, that's not that, because it's passive.
You got it. It's on the tip of your tongue, I'm sure. Some of the Arabic words. Go ahead.
He showed gratitude? No.
He
either.
was.
He was grateful.
He was shown.
Yeah. Oh, he was shown gratitude.
Yeah, exactly. He was shown gratitude. Another way you can translate it is appreciated. He was appreciated. Again, you have to add the was, even though it's not there in the Arabic. Right. So Allah says, وَكَانَ سَعْيُهُ مَشْكُورًا. Right, and their efforts were appreciated. مَشْكُورًا. Sa'i is their efforts. وَكَانَ سَعْيُهُ مَشْكُورًا. Right, and his efforts were appreciated. Okay, so mashkur. We got that one. Right, how about kafara means to disbelieve, but it also means the opposite of shukr. Right, so the opposite of gratitude. Right, so how would you translate makfur? Makfurun. So makfurun, you can steal the translation of kufira or shukira. It would essentially be the same thing without the tense. Sister Aman?
Yeah, I was going to nominate Faizan to do this, but
the one who was disbelieved in.
First of the form.
Oh, sorry.
That works. The one who was disbelieved in or rejected, or the one who was shown ingratitude.
True.
Right. All right. How about the next one? Sister Lubna? I can only see the names that are on here, so I'm assuming that there's other people.
Ma'rufun.
Ma'ruf. How would you translate ma'ruf? What does arafa mean?
Recognition.
He recognized or he knew, yeah. So ma'ruf is?
He was known.
He was known would be urifa. Right. So just strip the tense. So if I said shay'un ma'rufun, what would you say? You're very close. Right. He was known. Just go ahead.
He.
Right, so a lot of these things, they can just, instead of describing a person, they can be describing a thing as well. Right, so if I said Zaydun ma'ruf, you would say Zayd is?
Zayd is known.
Known, right? Zayd is known. Right, or if I said al-Qur'anu ma'ruf, right, you say the Qur'an is known. So how about, so what would be the opposite of that, Brother Shamim? Right, say, for instance, Zaydun majhul. Zaydun majhul.
Zayd was ignored.
Ignored would be a different word. Zayd is majhul. Opposite of ma'ruf. So if I said Zaydun ma'ruf, how would you translate it?
Zayd is known.
Yeah, so Zaydun majhul is the opposite. Zayd is?
Unknown. Or
unknown, exactly, right? Unknown. Literally, it would be Zayd is right? You could say or is, or people are ignorant of Zayd, but unknown is good enough. So you get the idea. You might have to play with it in English, to get a half decent English translation, right? But the fact that you understand it in Arabic is even more important, right? So if you said that هذا معروف, right? That we've done this before, this should be ma'ruf, right? This should be something that you know. تمام. Shukran. Right, so that's form one. Form one just follows the pattern of maf'ul. And the same thing applies that if you want to make it, right? So maf'ulun, if you want to make it dual, maf'ulani, right? Maf'uluna, right? Maf'ulatun. Right, so if I wanted to say Aisha is known, right? How would you say that in Arabic? Anyone?
عائشة معرفة.
Ma'rifa? Ma'rifa is a root noun. Close though. Ma'rufa. Right?
معروفة.
I made a mistake here. Yes, correct. Maf'ulatani. And then maf'ulatun. Okay, so you can say al-ummahat. What does ummahat mean? Anyone?
The mothers.
Good. All right, so the mothers, mashku. Whoops. How would you say that in Arabic, in English? Al-ummahatu mashkuratun.
The mothers were shown gratitude.
Good, right? Or the mothers are, right? Generally, nominal sentences are translated as present tense, only because we have to. So mothers are shown gratitude, or mothers are appreciated, right? So the same thing, maf'ulun, maf'ulani, maf'uluna, maf'ulatun, maf'ulatani, maf'ulatun. Right? Now form 2 to 10 are slightly different. And just like we did in the ism fa'il, form 2 to 10 are made from the mudari', right? However, they're made from the majhul version. So not yu'allimu, yu'allamu. He is taught, right? He is being taught, right? But the same process applies. You change the first letter to a meme, right? With a dhamma, mu'allamu, and then you change it to a tanween. Mu'allamun. How would you translate mu'allamun? If yu'allamu means what? What is yu'allamu?
Teaching? Like he is teaching or something like that?
Yeah, so yu'allimu with the kasra is he is teaching. Yu'allamu means he is being taught.
Oh,
Right?
oh
So
yeah.
it's passive. It's passive. Good, good. So if you change it to a noun, right, then how do you call it? How would you say it? So last time we changed yu'allimu, he is teaching, to mu'allimun, which means teacher. Right? And this time we're changing yu'allamu, he is being taught, to mu'allamun. So he is therefore the
One being taught?
exactly, right? The one being
Okay.
taught. Perfect translation. You could say student as well. That's perfectly fine. Right? So the student is the mu'allam, the one being taught, whereas the teacher is the mu'allim, the one teaching. So it's made out of the mudari', just like the ism al-fa'il, the active participle, right? Except that it's not made from the mudari' ma'ruf. Right? It's made from the mudari' majhul. Right? It's made from the passive present tense, or the passive verb, right? Present verb. Right, so if you use another example, for instance, we would say the Let's give a good example. طلب right, يقاتل. What does يقاتل mean? Anyone? قتل? The word قتل?
To kill?
It means to fight.
Okay.
Right? So it's from both sides. قتل is to kill. Right? So يقاتل means right, the one who's being fought against. So how do you change it to اسم المفعول?
The enemy?
Not what the meaning is. How would you change it in Arabic from يقاتل to the اسم المفعول, the passive participle, the noun?
مقاتل
موقع. Go ahead. What was the last part? موقع.
تل
Talun. Good. Muqatalun. Right. How about the first word here? How do you make that into ismul maf'ul?
مطلوب
Matlubun. Very good. Right. Why is it matlubun and not something else? Which form is it?
one
Form 1. Good. Right. So matlub, right, is something that is being sought, an objective, right? Your goal, your aim. That's why one of the meanings of La ilaha illallah is La matluba illallah, that there is no aim or objective except Allah. Right. Tamam. Right. So for form 2 to 10, you start with your mudari', majhul. You change the first letter to the meme, and then you add your tanween, or you can add an alif lam. Right. Al-mu'allamu is the one being taught, as opposed to right, someone being taught. Tamam. Al-mu'allamu. You can have an alif lam and tanween same time. Okay, so those are the two basic ones, and we've done a bit of that before, right? So this will fix, as you're reading the Quran, you'll see lots of words that are either ismul fa'il or ismul maf'ul, right? Some of them, even the names of Allah, Qadir, Khaliq, right? Raziq, right? The provider, the creator, all of these are ismul fa'il, right? Tamam, all right? Or ism maf'ul, you'll find in the Quran as well. So, the next derivative noun, let me just, is ism tafdil. Right. Ism, meaning noun, and tafdil. And just from looking at this, what type of word is tafdil? What form is it? Ism tafdil. Can anyone tell me what form at-tafdil is from? It's the root noun of one of the 10 forms.
Is this form 2?
Form 2, right? So form 2 is fa'ala, right? Yufa'ilu, which is present tense, just like yu'allimu just now. Taf'il. Taf'il is the root noun. Right, so if that's how form 2 works out, right, then what are the root letters of tafdil? Tafdil. What are the root letters of tafdil?
fa do lam
Fa, ba, lam. Good. So faddala, yufaddilu. Tafdil means to give someone precedence, to give someone preference or precedence, to favor someone over another. So ism tafdil is the superlative, or that's what they call it, superlative noun. What it does is it compares one thing to another. Right? This is better than that. So this is bigger than that. So this is taller than that. Right? So how do you make it? right? The form is made by putting your 3-letter word on a root, on the pattern of af'alu. Af'alu. Right now, almost any word can be put on this scale, except for words that denote a flaw or a defect, right? Or a color. So you're not going to use colors on this. So you can't say this is more red than that by saying ahmar. No, right? That's another word, another type of the derivative nouns is coming, right? Which has the same exact form, but it's specific to defects and colors, right? So like the word ahmar is red. Right? A'raj is the person who can't, right? Who's limping, right? A'raj. Right? They are not in comparison to anything, right? So, but besides those, any words you can use on this, right? So I'll leave that there. So let's, for instance, we have like the statement, Allahu Akbaru. Okay. Right. So now the scale. Right, you can use these as just a mere description of something else. Like for instance, here this is the subject predicate. Allah is greater, right? And the point of comparison is not mentioned because Allah is greater than anything you can conceive of. Right, so it's left unmentioned intentionally, right? But you could say that, for instance, Zaydun Akbar Akbaru min. Right? Zayd is greater than, right? Amr, for Amr. Okay. So here you can compare. Zaydun Akbaru min Amr. Zayd is greater than Amr. Right. So Akbar, what are the root letters of Akbar?
Kaf ba ra.
Kaf ba ra. Right. What does the word kaf ba ra mean? Do you know any other words that have the word kaf ba ra in it?
Disbelief.
That would be kafara. Kufr.
Oh.
So this is Akbar. Okay, so Kabir means bigger, literally, or greater. It also means, it could also mean older. Right? So Zaydun Akbaru min Amr, Zayd is older than Amr. Right, so depending on what you're describing, right, you can use the singular, which is af'alu, right, the dual, which is af'alani, right, and the plural, which is af'aluna, right, or you can say afa'ilu, which is more common. So one of the words for elders, like elderly people, either elder in age or elder in status, meaning the seniors, is Akabir. It's a respectful word, right? So you'll see that people, if they're giving a talk in the midst of people of elder age, they'll say that they would give, they show their respect to the Akabir, right? Either the Akabir in age or the Akabir in rank, right? Another word for these types of people are afadil. They're very respectful words to call your audience afadil, right? Which are, right, righteous people, people of virtue. So that's, but those are masculine. Right? Af'alu, af'alani, af'aluna, or afa'ilu. Right? If you want the feminine, would be fu'la. Can any of you know what the nickname of Khadija, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, what her nickname was?
Kubra.
Khadija al-Kubra. Good. All right, so Kubra is from the same word as Akbar. Right, but Kubra is feminine. Right, so Khadija al-Kubra is the greatest Khadija, literally. Right. And then, right, you have for layani, right, and then the plural will be for layatun, or fu'alun. Right, so, but these are not as common. Generally, this type of word is only used as a comparison, right? As a comparison to something else, right? But right. So, however, if you are using it as a comparison, you only use this, only this one right here. So, if you're saying, for instance, Khadija, right, is older than Aisha, how would you say it? Khadija is older than Aisha. How would you say it?
خديجة أكبر من عائشة.
Good. Right. Khadija Akbaru min Aisha. Right. So if you're comparing, then there's no need to match genders. Right. There's no need to match. You don't say Khadija Kubra min Aisha. Right. Because Kubra is only as a quality. Right. That Khadija the greatest. Right. Khadija al Kubra. But you wouldn't use Kubra or any of the others as a comparison to something else. If you're comparing, it's Akbar. Akbaru min. Right? And you can use any word, right? So if I wanted to say, so if the word tawil, it means taller, right? The root letters being tawala, how would I say that Khadija is taller than Aisha?
Khadija Atawil Aisha?
Close, close.
Okay.
So we change the kaf with a ta, the ba with the waw, and the lam with the ra. Right,
Okay.
So the
So
hamza stays.
okay. Atawel. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Atwal.
Atwel. Okay.
Khadija atwal min Aisha. Perfect. Right, so Khadija is taller than Aisha. And you can do that with any type of word. So you can say, right, what does Ain La mean? Right? Alima means to have knowledge, right? So Khadija a'lamu min Aisha means Khadija has more knowledge than Aisha, right? Or Khadija ashharu, right, is more famous than Aisha, right? And this is not talking about any specific, just examples, right? To them, right? So if you're comparing, you only use the first one, the afdal, right? Af'alu, right? And you plug in your root letters with the fa, ayn, and lam on that pattern. If you're describing a person as being the greatest, not in comparison, but just in general, then you match it according to gender and plurality. Right? So Khadija al-Kubra, Khadija wa Aisha al-Fu'layani, Fu'layatani. Sorry, I think that's correct. Fu'layani. Right? Where you say al-ulama al-afadil, right? The noble scholars. Right? Or al-alimatu al-fudal, fudal or fudaliyatun. But I just want you guys to at least have some background that these things exist. They're very important when you're reading the Qur'an, that you know at least where to reference what type of word this is. There are other ways to so the next one, right, is a little deeper. Are there any questions up to what we've covered so far, or anything that's a bit confusing you want to go over again? I believe we are on number 4, if I haven't gotten my numbers correct. Okay, the next one is as-sifa al-mushabbaha. best thing for these, to memorize the mushtaqat, right, is flashcards. Write them down on flashcards. Right, the Arabic, what does it mean? What does it do? How do you make it? Right? And then try to learn the scales one by one. Right? Generally, the scales follow the same pattern. فاعل, فاعلان, فاعلون, فاعلة, فاعلتان, فاعلات. Right? أفضل, أفضلان, أفضلون. Same thing. Okay, so الصفة المشبهة is the adjective of resemblance, which is a type of adjective, or you can say the resembling adjective, if that's spelled correctly. There's a huge debate on how to translate this into English, because I don't believe there's an English equivalent to it. Right? Does anyone know what the sifa is by itself? What is the sifa's job by itself? Just the regular sifa?
Descriptive.
It's good. It gives a description of something else, right? Just like an adjective, right? However, this sifa, right, which is based on different patterns, is not just this a temporary quality, but it's a permanent quality, right? So words that are permanent attributes are usually used on as sifa mushabbaha, and the only difference is that they have specific forms that they use. I'm going to try to pull them up here. Just give me a second, if I can find it. I wrote these down here. Right, so if you look here, so it says sifa al-mushabbaha bi-ism al-fa'il. Right, so it's an adjective that resembles the active participle, the ism al-fa'il. Right, so this adjective has, it kind of resembles the ism fa'il. So here we have two examples. Sami'un, what kind of word is sami'un? Which type of derivative noun is sami'un?
Samia.
Yeah, so it comes from sami'a, but what type of word is it?
A doer. Fa'il.
Yeah, what's the Arabic? Ismul?
Ismul fa'il.
Good. Ismul fa'il. It's the active participle. Right, so sami', it could be just once, right? Zaydun sami'un. Zayd, right, heard. Zayd hears, or Zayd is a hearer or listening to them. But if you say that somebody is sami', that means they have a continuous attribute of listening, right? Not just at that moment. Okay, right. So we say that, okay, Zaydun sami'un kalamak. Zayd heard your speech. Right? But you don't say Zaydun sami'un kalamak. Right? Zayd is an all hearer, right, of your statement just now. No, right? An all hearer is a continuous quality, regardless of whether there's something to listen to or not. Right? So Allah is as-sami'. Right? Allah is the all hearing. Right? Whether I'm speaking or not, Allah is the all hearing. But if Zayd is standing next to me and I'm speaking, then at that moment, Zayd is sami'. Okay, so there's a slight difference between the ism fa'il and the sifa mushabbaha. The sifa mushabbaha gives a prolonged, continuous attribute to the thing, whereas the ism fa'il is only ascribing that action, right, just at that moment, and not that it's continuous. Right, so many of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are on this type of scale. Right, so there, here I have on the screen, there are about 12 different forms, and these are all transmitted. Right, there's no pattern to these types of words. This is how the Arabs spoke, right? And these are the words that they use this continuous attribute meaning, right, on these patterns. But I just want to bring your attention to a few of them. If you look at numbers 10, right, 11, and 12, the last column here. Right, the first, what is number 10? Who can read that?
Fa'ilun, karimun.
Right, fa'ilun. Right, an example is kareem. Kareem is the generous person. Right, so a generous person, right? It's not just somebody who's generous, right, at the moment, but they have an intrinsic quality of generosity, right? So here, so from fa'il, right, you have many of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Can anyone think of a name of Allah that is on the pattern of fa'il?
بصير.
Basir, good. Right. There's one in Surah Fatiha. Anyone else? Basir, the
Rahim.
all-seeing. Go ahead.
Rahim.
Rahim, good. Right. The all-merciful. So it's not just right, at the moment Allah shows mercy. No, he has the continuous attribute of mercy. Any other ones? There's many.
لطيف.
So Latif, good. So Latif has, right, the subtle is the one who knows even the most subtle of things, right? So it's an attribute of knowledge. Right? You have
Al-Wakil.
Al-Wakil, good, the guardian, right? So these are on that pattern. So these are they're continuous attributes, right? So which is different than Basir. Basir, right? Someone who who sees at the moment. Zaydun Basirun. Zayd sees, right? But he doesn't have the intrinsic quality of all of sight at all times. So Rahim, all merciful, Latif, and Al-Wakil, and so forth. Right? And there's many more. Malik, right? Which is not one of the 99, but it's mentioned in the Qur'an. Malik and Muqtadir. The second, number 11, who can read that? Over here on the last column. Number 11.
أفعل أحمر.
أفعل أحمر. So now here we have again أفعل. Right. We mentioned just now another type of word that uses the pattern أفعل. Which one was that? Who can recall the name?
Ism tafdil.
Ism tafdil. Good. Right. So ism tafdil, we mentioned, right, is a superlative where you're comparing one thing to another or showing that something's greater than something else. Right. But there was two things that we excluded. We excluded defects and we excluded colors. Right. So when it comes to defects and colors, it's a sifa mushabbaha. It's in right, this continuous attribute. The continuous adjective is probably a good translation, right? So ahmar is the example, red, right? So something is not just red temporarily, right? Things that are red are generally red all the time, right? Same thing with defects, right? So let's say defects, right? We have, right? A'raj is a person who's lame, right? They have a problem walking. A'war, right, is one of the descriptions of the Dajjal, that they have one eye, or one eye is injured. You have, and then other things like ahmaq is not really a good word, right? Someone who's foolish, right? Stuff like that, right? So, right, in colors, obviously ahmar, abyad, right? Asfar, all your colors are going to fall onto that. Okay. And then the last one, number 12, is fa'lan. Right? Fa'lan is another very important form of the sifa mushabbaha, which again shows the fa'lanu. So it's not dual, it's not fa'lani, it's fa'lanu. So atshan means a person who's thirsty. Right? Someone who's very thirsty is atshan. Right? Right? But for instance, Rahman, right? Rahman is the all merciful as well. So Rahman and Rahim are similar, being that they're both ism, sifa mushabbaha. Generally, Rahman is written like this. Okay. Right, and then you have like other words like Jaw'an is a person who is hungry, right, and so forth. Okay. Any questions on that? That's the sifa al-mushabbaha. Right, and it resembles the ism fa'il insofar as you can say Zaydun, or you say Allahu Sami'un قولك. Right? Allah hears what you're saying. Right? إنه عليم بذات الصدور. Allah has knowledge of what's in the hearts. Right? So you can add an object to it. There is one last one, but we'll save that, inshallah ta'ala. We don't want to give too much. So let's just recap real quick. Let's go back to where we're down here. All right, so ism fa'il. Right. What do you remember about the ism al-fa'il, active participle? Anyone? Just shout out anything that you remember. I want to like kind of make a bullet points notes. Important things.
The one who does the fi'l.
Okay, so this is the one. Right, so this is right. Ism al-fa'il is the one who it's someone who's doing an action, right, but it doesn't have to be in a verbal sentence. Right, so if I don't have to say daraba zaydun, right, because zaydun then only in that context is the doer, but daribun by itself is ism al-fa'il wherever I put it. So if I said, for instance, this is actually a verse of the Qur'an. Sa'ala. Sa'ala sa'ilu. إذا وقعت الواقعة. القارعة. So, ما القارعة. Okay, what is sa'ala?
He asked.
He asked, right? So what kind of word is it?
Fi'l madi.
Fi'l madi, good. Right, so sa'ala. As-sa'ilu, what role does as-sa'ilu play in the context of this sentence? What role does it play?
Ism
The
fa'il.
fa'il.
Sorry?
Ism fa'il.
Is ism fa'il the type of word that it is, or is ism fa'il the role that it plays in the sentence?
Both.
Right. So as-sa'il, the type of word that it is, whether I put it in that sentence or if I put it just by itself. If I said, what type of word is it? Right. It's on the pattern of fa'il. It's an ism al-fa'il. It's a noun that's on the pattern of fa'il. So it's an active participle. But in the context of the sentence, what role is it playing? Just the fa'il. Right? Fa'il of the verb before it, not just intrinsically. Right? So you're right, it is both. Right? The type of word it is ism al-fa'il. The place that it is in the sentence is the fa'il. Right? Now that would show up better if I said this. Ra'aytu as-sa'il. How would you translate this?
I saw the questioner.
I saw the questioner. Good, good. Right, so in this sentence, in the context of this sentence, what role does as-sa'il play?
Maf'ul.
It's the maf'ul, it's the object. Right? What type of word is as-sa'il?
Ism fa'il.
Ism al-fa'il. Okay? Does that make sense? Right, so the word the questioner, that's an active participle type noun. It's a derivative noun, whether it's in this sentence or it's outside of the sentence. But in the context of the sentence, as-sa'il plays the role of the object. Right? I saw the questioner. So the questioner is the object. Right? In the sentence above, right? The questioner asked. right? The one asking asked, or the questioner asked, right? There, the ism fa'il, sa'il, is playing the role of the fa'il. So, does that make sense? I just want to clarify the difference between fa'il and ism fa'il. Right? And maf'ul and ismul maf'ul. Right? So one is a role that it plays in a sentence, and the other one is just an intrinsic attribute of that word, what type of word it is. So, how about can somebody translate the second verse? Waqa'a means to happen, right? Or to occur. Waqa'a means to occur, or it occurred. Okay. إذا وقعت الواقعة, right? When the, right, وقعت, واقعة, this is وقعت, right? The kasra is only to be able to read it, right? Sister Zainab, how would you translate this?
Which one? Sorry.
إذا وقعت الواقعة.
That means
وقع
which,
means
right?
to occur. Yeah, no, that means when.
And waqa means time, right? No, it's what?
No, وقع means to occur or to happen.
It's okay.
So what kind of word is al-waqi'atu?
It's a feminine of fa'il.
Fa'il or ism al-fa'il?
Ism al-fa'il, sorry. It's a feminine
Ism
version of
al-fa'il.
ism
Right,
al-fa'il.
so if waqa'a means to it occurred, what does waqi' mean?
The occur.
Yeah, the occurrence. Right? It's
The
kind
occurrence,
of
okay.
weird. Yeah, so when the
occurrence occurs.
yes, exactly. When the occurrence occurs. Right. So and the occurrence here is reference to the qiyamah, the day of judgment. Al-waqi' is the reality of our time, right? So you would say like the ilm al-waqi', the knowledge of the time that we live in, right? The current situation is called al-waqi'. Al-qari'ah is the qara'a means to knock on something. So qari'ah is the knocker. Right? So Allah says al-qari'ah, first word, the knocker. Right? And it's feminine. It's interesting. Right? The knocker. Ma al-qari'ah. What is the knocker? Wa ma adraka ma al-qari'ah. And what will make you know what the knocker is, right? And then Allah tells us about the day of judgment. Right? Any questions? Feel free to ask anything, even on previous lessons as well. I know we had a few postponements. I apologize for that. I've been a bit sick. Was there any previous chapters that were kind of confusing, or even this chapter was confusing? Or something that maybe a clear example would be better? If not, then we'll cover one more. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, to be honest, Ustad, I'm going to have to go back on a lot of this. It's just a lot for me at once, but that's okay. It's recorded, right? I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, everything's recorded.
Okay, good. Okay, so I to be honest, I'm still not getting the difference between file and ism file. I'm just being honest.
Okay, no, that's good. I'm glad you're being honest. Okay, so fa'il, right? We usually translate it as the doer, right? And ism al-fa'il, right, is the active participle. I prefer other translations, but this is too like grammarian type translation. Ism al-doer, you can say the nominal doer. The nominal doer. Okay, so fa'il, the first one, right, is a role, right? So in a verbal sentence, you're going to need a verb, and you're going to need a doer of that verb, right? At the very least. And some verbal sentences, meaning sentences that start with verbs, they have a third component, which is the object, right? The maf'ul. Right, so fi'al plus fa'il plus maf'ul, right? That's a jumla fi'liya. It's a verbal sentence. Okay. Right. So the fa'il is a role within a verbal sentence. Any word can take its place, can fill that role. So I can say that Zayd did something. I can say that Ahmed did something. Aisha did something. All of them can be the doer of that verbal sentence, right? Of the verb in that sentence. Whereas ismul fa'il is a type of word that denotes an action and a person who obviously is doing the action, right? And that is whether I put it in the context of a sentence or I just leave it as one individual word. So if I said, right, khaliq, right, creator. So creator is ismul fa'il. Right? It's not playing a role in a sentence. It's just the type of word that it is. It's a nominal doer. It's a noun, so it's nominal, right? That entails a person or a pronoun, I should say, which is the doer. So in this case, masculine singular, khaliq, right? He, and it entails an action, but with no tense. Okay. So now, if I said, for instance, khalaqa Allahu, right, as-sama. Right, Allah created the sky. Right, so here we have a verb. We have a doer of that verb in the context of the sentence, and we have an object.
That I
Okay?
get. Okay.
Okay, so this is a role, right? The name of Allah here is playing a role in the sentence as the doer of khalaqa, of the verb. Right? Allah is the doer of the verb khalaqa. Right? Allah created the sky. Right? And generally, we translate the fa'il first, then the verb, then the object. So Allah created the sky. Right? But if I just said the name Allah by itself, right? Is there any action being denoted here?
No.
Is it playing any role? There's no sentence to play a role in.
Right.
Right? So Allah is just a name. Right? It's just a name. Right? It's the greatest of all names. But if I said khaliq by itself, right? Khaliq is a noun, but it is denoting an action. Right? Creator. Right? So you have the ER. In English, you have the ER. Creator. Okay. Now, khaliq, the word khaliq is ismul fa'il, regardless of whether I put it in a sentence or if I just leave it by itself. So the type of word it is ismul fa'il. Right? So you can say that fa'il is a role that any word can play within a sentence that comprised of a verb and a doer. Right? It's the doer. Whereas ismul fa'il is a type of word which denotes a being and an action, right? Regardless of whether it's in the context of a sentence or not. Does that make sense?
So basically, unlike the verb has like two components in the same word. So I don't know if that's a proper way to say it, but
yeah, that's true. There's two things in the same word, whereas the verb has three. Right. So right, the verb has three. The regular noun has one. Right. So here, if we just broke it down.
okay,
right,
I see what you mean.
The noun, a regular noun like Zayd, only has a person. Right. It only has the person itself. No action, no tense. Right. The verb has three things. It has a person, right, an action, and a tense. Right. So if I said daraba, right, it means he hit. Right, so he is implied inside it. Right. The action is hitting, and then tense is past. Right. Whereas ismul fa'il is somewhere in between the two. Right. There's a person, so khaliq, for instance, right, the creator. So there's definitely a being implied there. Right. So there's the right? They'll say being because Allah is not a person, right? And then there's an action, but there's no tense. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
So it's kind of like a special type of noun. Whereas fa'il can be played, you can put anything in there. It's just a role in a sentence, right?
Okay.
It's the subject of a verbal sentence, essentially.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's like in between the two. Yep.
Yeah. Right. So same exact distinction applies to the maf'ul by itself, which is the object, and the ismul maf'ul. Right. So here as-sama is not on the pattern of maf'ul. Right. Like the word, for instance, ma'ruf, right? Something that's known. Right. So ma'ruf is on the pattern of ismul maf'ul. It has an action, it has a person, right, but no tense. Whereas sama is playing the role of object, just regular maf'ul. Right? It's not on any pattern. It doesn't look like maf'ulun. It's just as-sama. It's just a regular noun playing the role of an object. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that really cleared it up. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Barakallah feek. Any other questions? So once again, I mean, it can get quite daunting if you don't stay ahead of the terminology. But take your time, write these things down on some flashcards. Right? Test yourself. What is the ism fa'il? What is the maf'ul? Right? Forget about the English translations. Just understand it in Arabic. It's actually better to not rely on English translations. Right? So passive, active, right? Ma'ruf, majhul is better to use than passive active. If you need the English to understand how it works at first, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But try to accustom yourself to using the Arabic terms, because some of the nature of Arabic is that English doesn't really do it justice, and eventually you'll get to a point where you understand it more in Arabic than you do in English, almost to the extent that you'll forget English, like me. So we'll stop there. We have two more that are really important, and we'll just kind of point to that right now, so it's not a surprise. There's the ism al-ala, which is a noun that denotes the instrument, and then there's ism al-makan, the noun of place. Right. So the noun that denotes an instrument, like for instance, fataha. What does fataha mean?
Open. He opened.
He opened, right? Right. So the root letters fataha has the meaning of opening something, right? The tool by which you open something, if you put those letters on this pattern, right, or other applicable patterns, then you will get a noun that means the instrument by which you do that action. Right, so miftahun is what? What is a miftah?
Key.
Key, right? So a key, what does a key do?
Opens door.
Good. So it's alatul fath. It's the instrument of opening something, right? So a key. Right, so so it's either mif'alun or mif'alatun. Right, these are the three patterns. Right, or mif'alun. Right, any of these three patterns. Right, these are the most common patterns. So mirwaha, right, is a fan, because rih essentially is wind. Right, it's the tool by which you make wind. Right? It's a fan. Right? Mikhyat is a needle. It's the tool by which you do khayt, which is sewing. It's common pattern is this one, mif'al. Like misbah is the tool by which the instrument by which you give light. So it's a lamp. There is one other, which is not as common, which is fa'alun. Right, so fa'alun. Right, the word khatam is the name of the Prophet ﷺ, which means it's a seal. It's actually the name for a ring which was used to make a stamp onto something. It's called a khatam. It's called a seal. So the Prophet is khatamun nabiyyin. He's the tool by which Allah sealed prophethood. So he's the seal of prophethood. The same thing with alameen, the world. Right? Alam. Alameen is the tool of instrument. It's the instrument of knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it comes from the word ilm. Right? So Rabbil Alameen is the plural of alamun. So it's the tool of instrument. It's the tool of knowledge. Because the world is a tool by which we can gain knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's one. And then the last is the place in which you do something, which takes the pattern of maf'alun with a fatha on the meme, as opposed to the kasra on the meme, mif'alun, which is ism ada. So you have masjidun, the place of sajda, right? Matbakhun, which is the place of cooking, which is the kitchen. Right? Mat'am is a restaurant, the place of eating, and so forth. Right? Maktab is the place of writing, which is a desk. So any questions on those? We're going to go into them in more detail, inshallah, in the next class. We'll start with that. We'll do a small review. And then, inshallah, we will do the last one, which is ism mubalagha. And then what we want to do is to start working on the forms themselves. Has everyone received the handout for all the forms, all 10 forms? We have one thumbs up. Anyone not receive it?
To be honest, I haven't, but like I know you're not technical support, so I can try submitting a ticket or something.
So you didn't get it, or you did get it?
I didn't, but is it on our course page or?
It might be. Let me let me reach out to the media team, the tech team, and I'll have them send it to you right away.
All right, yeah, because for some reason the last email I got, like there wasn't attachments, and I checked our course page, I didn't see any notes, so it was kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was put on the course page. I'll check into it, inshallah, right after the class. Inshallah.
Thank you.
So what we'll do is we want to go through the forms slowly, right, before we finish the class itself. Right. So while we're going along in the book, we want to go over the forms formally with each other. And I'm going to give you all a shortcut way of memorizing all 10 forms. Right. So, but you have to memorize the forms themselves, but it's just a shortcut way of practicing it and recalling it instead of having to do all of the scales all the time. Right? So as long as you knew it once and you understand it once, right, then this is a way to keep it present in your mind. So we want to start that next week, inshallah. All right, so we'll stop there, inshallah. If there's any other questions, then feel free to reach out. We have, in the next class, we'll have a lot of time to answer questions, inshallah. وصلى الله تعالى وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم الحمد لله رب العالمين جزاكم الله خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh Yusuf. Hope you're feeling better.
آمين جزاك الله.
عليكم السلام.
Walaikum assalam.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.